All right, this is the July 22nd, 2024 meeting of the Board of Equalization of Albemarle County. Call it order and ask for a roll call from the members of the board.
You got Julie. Bob Beard, Samuel Miller District.
David Mitchell, Whitehall.
Dave Garford, Ravenna District.
Okay, and I'm Evan Mayo representing the Scottsville District. Will the members of the Albemarle County Assessor's Office please identify themselves?
So I'm Peter Lynch, the county assessor.
Lily Taylor, Deputy Assessor. Deb Collier, Commercial Appraiser.
Right, thank you. So has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from the previous meeting?
We do have a one error on it. Just some of the numbers, the starting numbers in the one of the branch lands. That's the only problem that we found with it, but we can certainly get those corrected. And if you want, you can approve it based on those corrections, or you can wait until do it this afternoon if you like.
We didn't get a copy of those.
Oh, you? Okay.
Did you?
Do we give you a copy of it? Oh, you mentioned it almost like you had already gotten it.
Well, I thought I saw another set, but now I'm realizing it's probably just the set for him. So
Can we do it this afternoon?
Sure.
And we'll get the numbers corrected and then.
that would be fine. So that's minutes, and then I will swear in anyone who's going to give testimony on the 3 hearings this morning. Raise your hand. So, do you swear that you will give that in your testimony documentary evidence today that you will give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Good, thank you. Okay, so we're ready to hear from the applicant with respect to the first application.
Thanks for having me. My name is Mark Woods. We own and operate we are Fairwood Properties, but we own and operate the Storage Solutions Center, which is at 1728 Seminole Trail. It's just off of the Route 29 intersection. You've got CVS, Jefferson Coins, Caliper Collision, and we're in between Caliper and Carter Myers dealership. We've been there 25 years. I think we've been operating pretty close to that. We are a traditional self-storage facility. Some climate control, some a lot of non-climate control, all drive up traditional. Just real quick history, not to bore you with details. It was originally a Storage USA that was built in about 1989. We bought it around year 2000. We have always approached our business from a long-term operational, not something that we're looking to sell. So I have never done a formal valuation from an outside entity of any kind. We operate the business and intend to do that for some time. My concern and what brings us here is really assessments. We cruised around in the like 2019, we're 4.4 million, 4.6, total values 4.7. And then from 22 to 23, we went from 4.7 or 4.8 to 6.7, 40% increase. Love me off guard. You're not used to the process, and it's gone up another 5% since. So we're properties assessed at 7 million for the property. Look, when I got that, just to get some on the GIS, just some of the local, the Caliper building next door, which used to be the Goodwill store, and before that, the bread store, went up 16% the same year from 22 to 23. Myers, been there a long time. They went up about 10% or so. Looked at the Northside Library, it was up around 17%. Where I found some higher increases would have been the Daily Progress building was up about 40%. So was the in the same time period, the 22 to 23 assessment. The used storage facility went up similar numbers to us, around the 40% range. So that's just what I found, and just poking around on the and the public storage went up a bunch as well. Didn't know what the connection was. Since I've never done a valuation formally from outside to see, I kind of looked at it from, or I did look at it from, if we were to try to sell, to come up with some kind of numbers of what I think would be working. We've done somewhere, this facility's done around 600, 575, 607, 637,000 in 23 and 636,000 in 23, 637 in 22. So those are some of the higher numbers. We've been able from about 18 to 23 to increase about 6% in sales. So we don't have any big jumps. We've been fortunate enough to have a kind of slow, steady slog upward, which is a good thing and somewhat manageable. So really, that works out to, if we use my 2023 sales numbers of 636,000, that works out to about $53,000 a month we do in sales. At a $7 million, in fact, I talked to commercial and Mr. Mitchell, or some of you guys that do some more commercial loans, 8% seemed to be a number. Commercial rate that may be about where we are these days, plus or minus. When we bought it, we did a 10-year note on a 20-year schedule, and refinanced after 10. So I did the same thing at 8% on a 10-year note on a 20-year schedule. Payments work out to be about $58,000 a month. My point is pretty straightforward, that with these valuations and numbers, since I didn't have much else to go on, I can't sell it, or nobody could buy it at current rates. Granted, when we bought it in 2001 or 2, the price was around 3 million. We were about 5%. And those numbers, the monthly mortgage payments were somewhere in the 15 to 18,000. I didn't go back and look at the actual numbers. We tried to pay extra on the note for some time, because like I said, the goal was to always operate and pay the note off as quickly as we can. So even at, don't want to be, even at a note at 8%, what's the value? I mean, to be able to buy this storage solution at our current sales, if we were trying to pay 25% of our sales as a bank note, that puts the valuation down in the $3 billion range, which is kind of where it was when we bought it, which I don't think that's realistic, but just to kind of help me understand the valuation and the progression of where it goes. So I think we could, the 4 million range. Well, another thing too, at about $1 million an acre, there we're 3.01 acres. Also spoken to, if we built a new traditional non-climate or a traditional drive-up type of metal building facility, it would work out somewhere in the $70 to $80 a foot range. Our facility is 50,000 square feet. $80 a foot puts it at about 4 million there, 3 for the land. We're at 7 million if we built it brand new. So, and this thing is, like I said, 30 years old. And that's part of my other challenge. The improvements in 2022 were made that. Then we jumped there. My old metal buildings went from $1.9 million to 3.3 million, 3.6. So, like I say, without having done an outside evaluation of the property, this is kind of how I approach that. Some of these numbers are high, and I think the numbers, the value would be closer to the 4.7 range, 2021 and 22, rather than the 7 million that's assessed now. And that's a huge jump for us, like a 40% jump in real estate taxes. So that's what prompted me to do my informal, I call it, evaluation to get to where I am. So again, I don't have to do this kind of thing. I've never done it the first time in front of the board. So hope this is some reasonable information to give you. That if there's something else that we need, I'm glad to provide. That's really my position, is we need to be closer to $4.5 to $5 million valuation or assessment rather than the 7.
Any questions for Mr. Wood?
Yeah, that gets,
I'll tell it, you'll get 3 minutes after they
Okay.
talk.
I don't know if I took 10 or not. I didn't rehearse. And
You're-
like I said, I'm a little shaky there. So I apologize if I seem somewhat nervous.
before Deb gets started, I just wanted to point out that, so there was no original review during the review period. This came to the Board of Equalization kind of as the first step. So
We didn't do an internal review.
we didn't do that, right? We didn't do the internal review level. We did review it for this. And in that review, we found that instead of a expense category 1, we should use an expense category 2. So we are asking you to reduce the value, not as much as Mr. Wood, but the number that we are asking for is $6,224,000, and that is based on the change of the expense class because of the on-site.
Can you tell me what the difference in those expense classes are?
It's from 30% to 35%.
The expense that you have down here to in your
On page
estimated
4.
on page 4 of
Yeah,
3.
page 4, flexible expense classes are 1, 2, and 3. Expense class 1 is typically single level drive up, no on-site. And this is 2 is drive up access, some climate control, typically with on-site management.
So, and you see on the workup on page 3 that we use 35% in that calculation. And I also just want to point out that this is the first time we've gotten, I think, since 2016, the actual expense statements.
And I just got questions, but if you want to do your presentation first.
Right.
There's a long, go ahead.
Okay.
I'll try to remember to ask them.
Okay. So the mini storage has changed quite a bit from the beginning of the pandemic on. They're pretty hot commodity, so cap rates went down, so that, you know, the same revenue or similar revenue would actually create a higher value as the interest in mini storage went up during that period. But I'll let Deb kind of go through how we just kind of summarize how we kind of come up with these values.
So we use the income approach, and for the 2024 assessment, the 2022 operating expenses were used. This is because 2023 would not have been available at the time of the reassessment. On page 4 is a discussion of the income and expenses. We have the subject's total revenue of $637,340. Based on the assessment model, we applied an assessment ratio of 35% for expense class 2 properties, which is what this was changed to. Expenses were $223,069. Replacement reserves have been estimated for the model at 4% of effective gross income. That's an additional deduction of $25,494, leaving a net operating income of $388,777 after deducting reserves. The next thing that we look at is the class of property. We have self-storage asset classes 1, 2, and 3, which are listed on page 5 of your presentation. This is a class 2 property, which is typically older than class 1, still reasonably well maintained, often seen by investors as value add investments. For the cap rates, they were supported by the PwC Real Estate Investor Survey for the third quarter of 2023 for the national self-storage market. Those overall rates range from 4.50 to 6.50 and average 5.61. Looking at sales throughout Virginia, we found sales ranging from 3.67 to 6.75 with a median of 4.72. And then on a price per square foot basis, the sales range from $52.64 to $419.27 per square feet with a median of 144.13. The sales are located on the next page, page 6. And we've just kind of slotted in where the subject would be in terms of a price per square foot. Which is 123.19 at this valuation, which is below the median. The cap rate was determined as for class 2 as 6.25% for this model. And when you take the NOI of 388,777 divided by the cap rate of 6.25, we're asking for a reduction in value to 6,220,400. We believe that this is fair and equitable.
Have questions, Mr. Mitchell, or did we answer them?
Did you have the 2022 operating numbers when you did the original assessment?
Yes,
We
we had a version of them.
Yes, we did.
The version that came to you was slightly different than what we had received, different categories of expenses.
Yeah, the total income and expenses, I think,
We're similar.
were very similar, but some of the breakdown of the utilities and stuff like that were different in the two statements. But we did have a statement originally that our value was based on.
So your 2024 assessment,
It's 2022.
2022 data,
Right.
and you've got. That provided a 39, just call it 40% expense ratio. Is that right? And
We
then
use 35
all
for that.
using
part.
35, and I guess this goes back to the management fee probably. I just did a quick count on his. Management fee is 12.8% of
Right.
gross. What do y'all think? Do you have a
We
number?
typically look at 4%.
Do you break it down that much?
We typically use 4% of EGI on this model.
And that's in that 40%,
Correct, correct.
4%,
4%.
of gross.
No, effective growth. But that's what we have anyway.
So that's, I mean, that's not a full 5% difference. His numbers versus
Correct.
allocating. I understand.
5 of the units, I think, were rented to Mr. Wood. Was that considered as an expense or foregone income?
I looked at just the total income that was reported.
Say that yes. I guess the last page of the report shows that there are 5 of the units that he's using to support the business. So there's no revenue off of it. I think that's right. I could add to it. Yeah, I mean,
How do y'all typically?
We use the reported revenue.
Well,
They reported 637,300.
right, if there is a notable amount of space that is owner occupied that either gets no rent or different than market rent, we will try to adjust for that. I don't think we even noticed that this was the case, and and this might not be a notable amount. Sometimes you might have 20% of the property or
Right.
something like that, like an office building that the owner is in, but they rent, or maybe they pay off market or something like that to themselves. But we did not include any kind of analysis of that in this.
so did you form an opinion about the difference between the profit and loss or the operating statement that was attached to Mr. Wood's submission titled or dated April 1, 2024, and then the one that was submitted to you that you used in your analysis?
It's very similar. His categories have changed, so I can't speak to everything that changed because I couldn't reconcile it. But the bottom line was that the total expenses were for what we were provided was 304,065. What he provided to you all was 304,604.54.
Yeah, for our purposes, it was close enough not to really
Yeah.
be material. for our assessment.
Okay.
Do I get a report, the assessor's report, similar to what you had, just from my,
We can provide.
that would be interesting to know. It sounds very thorough. There's a reduction. I know based on my sale, percentage of the 3 million was way low. The 5 is kind of where we were. So I think the numbers sound great. Yeah, I'm just curious to know, did some, just from my personal, it seemed the 22 to 23 assessments went up dramatically for self-storage. Was it a different formula used?
No, we estimated there was enough operating statements provided in 2022. So those are estimates to best far.
So that's where that came. So that was the difference really. And does that mean the other facilities that, and they're not in my business really, but these other facilities that went up proportionally to what we did they not submit the same? Like say the used store, the public and everyone, all seemed like all the storage guys went up 40%. So you had those, so.
Yeah, so it could have been the cap rates. It's a combination of things. It could have been that properties were reporting more revenue. It could be that the cap rates changed, or it could be that they didn't provide and we estimated. So it's a whole combination of those.
Well, in 2022 to 2023 is the big jump. I mean, it's a 1.25 cap rate. It's a big number, right? And I'm gonna assume revenues went up during that time too.
I'm assuming that too.
Um,
I just didn't.
Good business to be in.
I agree.
I'd like to be in it
Well, I agree.
right now.
If we were thinking, well, and like I said, I don't, not to ramble, but the big boys, I call it, are coming to town. We've got 100,000 square foot of climate control being built today, right directly behind this property, and another 105,000 on First Bar next to Better. So, you know,
They're gonna be at the top of the market.
they're gonna be, and hopefully the positive is they may drive the market up. It's an elevator versus a drive up, so I get that, but I am intimidated. Pretty intimidated. I think I'm guessing, and not to throw, but to pull a number out of there, I'm thinking 30% less for an adjustment until they fill up, and then we see what we are. So the market, even though on this corner we're on with storage pollution and community self-storage over by the butt and public storage and used storage, all four kind of coexisted for a long time. Now we've got these big guys, Fifth Street Extended, Pantops has got one, and River Road, so all these new facilities. So the market has really changed. So in hindsight, maybe we should have sold these things 10 years ago. But it's still the same. We still have the same desire to operate as a family business. You know, I'm 65. I figure I got 20 more years. I'd like to kind of do that. So this is not relevant to this, but
Well, in the future, the cap rates are probably gonna change. Next year, I mean, everything is.
There's always a cycle.
And then I don't know if his asset class or expense class is gonna change. Age, it will, maybe not.
20 years from now, maybe,
Right.
but not in the near future necessarily.
so we,
Stop taking care.
Don't do that.
yeah, I appreciate that. We really are trying to do best foot forward and like say some facilities to do. It has been a good business.
Okay, you know. I would not want to be in the top of the market. Not that,
The demand on the low end, I think we can exist things. But anyway. I appreciate the thoroughness of yours. That place. That it would be nice just to have that so I can.
Oh, yeah,
learn from.
absolutely. I'll share that with you.
This last thing to understand, we're proposing the new, going from 7.017 to 6.224, is this?
62204.
Right. That's what we're asking for. Yes, it's so
the assessors
That's.
proposing after they adjust it.
Since the next one is a similar property, did you want to go through that one first, or you want to handle these a la carte.
Prepared to vote on this one or deliberate? Would you like to hold it over?
I'm okay with the change accessories.
Is there a motion with respect to application number 87?
I will move that we reduce the assessment on application number 87, the 1728 Seminole Trail from 7,017,900 to 6,220,400.
Thank you, Mr. Beard. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Right, thank you, Mr. Blue. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, application number 87 is,
Can you give me the land and improvement number? I'm looking.
well, the land wouldn't change.
To the improvements.
That would be just be the difference.
I'll attempt to do that.
Okay. So we're now ready to hear from the applicant on application number 23.
Yes, similar, well, same art. The Twenty-two to 23, to 42. I had a 42% increase. Back off of that, we were down from 9,049,000 down to 8.408. So we went back down to about 7% there. And our sales were down somewhat, and we should be pretty close, somewhere between that 840 and 860 number this year. Same deal if I was going to sell it if we use the 8.4 instead of 8.4 would be $70,000 a month based on my 8% 10-year, 20-year schedule. And our sales were 70,520. So again, the note on that scenario would be more than or right at our sales. If it was at the 9 million valuation or assessment, we would be underwater. We would, the monthly payment would be 75,000, we'd be doing 72. So that's why I thought those were high enough to reconsider. Again, I've not done an evaluation. It's still the same story as Storage Solution. We've not done a true valuation. We operate it and tend to operate it. Just in the same in the area. I just looked at some of the local, the Putt property went up 22 to 23, 34%. The Piedmont Tower on the corner went up 22%, and the Bank of America went up 18%. So all those were pretty substantial increases in them on their own. And like I say, community self-storage was up 42%. And again, it's backed off a little bit. So just on my sheet that I turned in, I did the same math, $1 million an acre for 2.56. And then I used $80 a foot, 50,000 square foot was 4 million. So 6.5 million was the number there. Again, I would discount personally the 25-year-old buildings are not the same as new. So I think for my example, the 6 million was a little more than I was comfortable with. So I think we're somewhere in that $6 million valuation or assessment or value I would put on the property. Just using the numbers that's how I got this. Didn't have an official way to discount how much buildings are now worth compared to new. I feel like substantially less. And we try to maintain them the best we can, but they're not. Again, a short presentation, but it's very much similar to what I did on storage solution. So I'll be more comfortable with the $6 million range, similar to what storage solution would be.
All right. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Wood? Okay, then you hear from the assessor's office.
Unlike the other property, that we already have this one in a class or an expense class 2, so we're not proposing any change on this one. We already had it. This basically the same way, but it does have quite a bit more revenue as part of the equation. So which why the two properties are not the same, but I'll let Deb run through this quickly.
Okay, again, we use the 2022 operating statement. Total revenue reported was 861,571, based on the 35% self-storage expense class 2, expenses 301,550. Replacement reserve again was 4% of effective gross. Net operating income was 525,558 after deducting reserves. Similar to the other property, this is also an asset class 2. And the cap rate analysis is the same as what we had discussed before. The cap rate provided for class 2 property is 6.25, once again, giving a value of 8,408,900.
So the difference between the actual operating expenses and the estimated expenses of $100,000, was there any consideration for where that could have existed? I wonder if it would have been associated with the operation of the U-Haul company, which may not be contemplated by the expense ratio or the expense percentage that's applied to self-storage units.
Well, we consider the U-Haul, and that's why we felt that the 35% was adequate.
Any details in the
And the main difference from the other storage facility, to my eye, is just the payroll expenses are 2.5 times higher.
Yes.
You really can't tell if this is a standard year or not, because we have to see.
But there was a limitation.
There's no management. So maybe that's.
Yeah. 3 times higher. Right. Yeah, 140.
This is the first one you have.
How is this facility staffed? Why is the payroll expense so much greater?
U-Haul is labor intensive compared to just renting storage units. The other issue, Mark Hammond has been with us 25 years. And he makes more. His salary is higher. The other part of the payroll is the health insurance that we provide is a big part of the payroll. We don't have that same level of, we've been, since it's same ownership of the two companies, the health insurance goes through community self-storage. So that contributes probably between Hammond's payroll, Hammond's pay and health insurance. We provide them, we pay for their insurance, they pay for the deductible. got a pretty, it's a gold clad. For Mark. And in fact, my insurance was on there as well. So that's the biggest difference in the payment. And two, U-Haul's a little more like, well, a lot more intensive. I mean, weekends, we've got 2 people working in the office, hourly people, issue to Hammond. Summer times are busy, winter times are not quite as much. But it is. I've grown to be more comfortable with U-Haul because the commissions have gotten, we've grown it to about 100,000 of them. I think U-Haul changes, you spend roughly 80% of your time on the U-Haul side compared to the storage side. So I was never a big fan in the beginning, being able to grow some, and it really helps. It's a commission base. You have to have somebody there anyway. You have to add a little bit of labor to make it work. So it does help. To answer your question, I didn't have a good answer first, but the health insurance is probably the biggest part plus the most pay.
How many climate controlled units do you have in this one compared to?
We have 121 in community self-storage this one, and we have 48 at here.
I'm surprised there's not more difference in the utilities.
It's surprisingly, yeah. We've got 2, I mean, it's an air conditioned unit. It's all 21 units in a long hallway. We've got a unit code system that's in there that we just replaced. It was 20 grand or 18 grand to replace one of them. But it does not affect the utilities are not tremendously. My climate control with Fairwood, it's short solution. It's around $300 a month for, I've got it broken down between the office and the back part. So it's $40 a month. That's around $300 a month for back for the climate control, it's lighting. And I just paid the bill. It's around $600 a month. Not substantially more. We can.
I just was curious about that. I figured if you're air conditioning and heat and all those spaces, it would be a lot more.
What we do is one big building, 2 big units, and we keep the thermostat, the low is 50 and the high is 80. So in that range. So summertime, it's not freezing cold. And that's kind of standard stuff, the 50 days. You get it as control too. That's the big thing. It's, a little less than 50%. And 2, not to jump around, but it's storage solution. We had no climate control. We took a 5,000 square foot building and added air conditioned units and humidifiers, dehumidifiers to those units to get some climate control there. And would like to assume that in the future.
Anything further that you wish to offer in rebuttal, Mr. Wood?
I don't, that's again, it's a lot, it's just a high number for me. I mean, if we were going to try to sell it to somebody coming to buy it, if I had 8 million, this may not be relative, but if I had $8 million to invest, I could go to the stock market, get 10% or even 5% and not have an employee health insurance bill. Wouldn't buy stocks. Don't know if that's relative or not. But on an $8 million note,
The market in general.
Right.
That's what feeds into the cap rates, all of those things.
I appreciate it. I just kind of laid in bed before I got here this morning. At 3:30 in the morning, I was thinking, what am I going to say? These numbers don't really work. If I had 8 million to invest in, I'm not sure that's wrong. That was just a thought. So even at 5% to not lift a finger would be more fun. Although I like what we did.
From the assessor. Am I reading this right, that in 2023, you had this as a class 1 expense, and a class 1 cap rate? Or
Yes.
Based on the cap rate.
was that what it was going back a couple of years too? That's what it looks like.
Yes.
So the reduction from the 9 million to the 8.4.
Was it during the reassessment?
Expense.
Correct.
A
And it's based
combination
on the information that we were provided for this year.
because of the expense, because he provided you a P and L
Because we got it
essentially.
down, yeah. Otherwise, we're estimating.
Well, the cap rate would, the class was changed, yes.
Right. But is that a function really of the P and L or of you
It's not.
just reviewing the property and making a different decision?
Correct.
So that helps.
That was changed in 23.
For 420. In 23, it was a class 1, and 24 is a class 2.
And the expense, class 1 through 3 expense ratios are derived from other reporting, that self-storage facilities do. That's correct.
We also have a publication.
We do. I use an expense publication
Right, so it's a combination of
to look at the trend.
the publicized expense ratios for the typical classes and the experience that we get from properties that.
But looking at, this is my edification, not necessarily pertinent to this. Looking at the expense class descriptions, asset class descriptions, that's really looking at the property and not so much of a P and L.
That's exactly right. What does it have? Does it have the on-site management? How old is it? Yeah, that's not based on the P and L. Correct.
I mean, did the assessor's office draw any conclusions about why the observed expenses were so much greater at 46.65% versus 35% estimated?
It's hard to do that in 1 year with 1 year of data, and it's not unusual for it to vary. If there were.
Flashing by your
System, I don't know what the timing of that was. But if there was any capital items that might have been included in expenses that 1 year, but they weren't reported separately, that could cause it. And there are years in which the expenses are lower and sometimes much lower. So
What, do you take those out and then you put in this, some type of like replacement reserve? Like
yes,
if you think that their number, they have a 20% expense on something, but it's something that's gonna last 10 years.
Right.
You would strip that out and replace it with a 4% reserve, so you don't end up
exactly.
up and down, up and down, up and
So
down.
it's very
That's correct. Yeah, I mean,
But you
because
need
it is
that
a capital.
detail.
correct.
Otherwise, well, even with that detail, you do try to balance it out.
We do try and balance it out. So in the case that we identified something that would come out, in this case, with mini storage, we would take it out in order to determine what the true operating expense was. And then, we would have that information as we analyzed everybody. So we would find maybe it was 38% on this property, it was 30% on another property, that were all the same expense class. And then we would come up with a standard for that class using everybody's and the published data. But we would remove those items that were capital items and use that replacement.
That's really not expensive, capital items.
It's just capitalizing. Yeah.
Are all your payroll expenses attributed to this property come from this property? You don't send somebody over to the other one to do some work?
My maintenance guy split his hours between 20 hours into storage solution every, well, 10 hours a week and 30 hours a week for my maintenance guys. He's got some grants back and forth. And if somebody calls in sick at one, so, um, I try to keep it as clean as on both as I can and come up with something reasonable. It is more maintenance and community self-storage than storage solution. But yes, if somebody's out, and whether it's COVID or vacation or whatever, and I want a fair amount of hours, just to fill in the difference.
What Mr. Wood explained about his own health insurance being included, I think that's what you said, would not be normal. That would be an extra expense that would be above the market analysis and the management fee. It might show up in a management fee and, we've seen it where the owner is involved in the management more, or at least the bookkeeping more maybe, where some of those expenses get included as an expense. Sometimes they get included as a management expense. It really matters. Who does it?
Well, look at this. It's like an investor's gonna come in and pay. So he's got to strip out the things that,
Correct.
so that everybody's looked at equally. I mean, we all run our businesses, they run our businesses, but an assessor kind of has to look at what does an investor class, when it comes to commercial properties, what would an investor class pay for the business and the revenue off of it? And you have to equalize out, your salary, things that an investor. I mean, if the investor came in and bought one of your properties, they would look at every single expense that you're just not, like I said, you got a guy that works here forever. That's an expense you're willing to pay for lots of different reasons. Whereas that percentage expense that the market bakes into these things and applies to your top line revenue is, they're gonna say, we're gonna get it down to 30 or 35, hell or high water.
And
I
they
mean,
wouldn't,
that's kind of a way you have to,
right, and they
that's the way
wouldn't,
you have to assess things.
they wouldn't necessarily pay a premium for a specific manager
Right, exactly.
or cover their pays or stuff like that. So those things, really are specialized to this property, but they're not part of the buyer's mentality.
So I understand that, they would trend the labor back towards whatever market is, but if I understand correctly, your compensation, like there's no payroll amount in here other than your health insurance, right?
For me,
Yeah,
I get a paycheck from here, whereas I have a management fee at Bearwood.
got it. Okay.
That's an accounting issue too. I mean, I work in both stores. I'd say a lot, I may not work as much as some, but I mean, I work a lot of hours between the two stores. And because of a previous ownership that I had with my father in the beginning, management fee made sense to be there and to get a paycheck at community self-storage. So my annual pay is split between the two.
Got it.
There's a management fee, one is a paycheck, two, full taxes.
Okay. Yeah, I end up feeling like the 35% is probably not a great fit for this facility. Both of his facilities are significantly in excess of that number. Even if you backed out the health insurance, I think they're gonna both be north of 40%. And I see that the class pieces change over time, right? They were at 40% last, or they were at 37, 40. 40. Yeah, down to 30, back to 35. But, we can't upend the entire expense class system, for one where it doesn't seem to fit particularly well.
His expenses include real estate taxes, right?
They do.
Take that out.
These aren't loaded cap
These aren't
rates.
loaded cap.
Yeah. That's just on apartments that we've done.
Just on. I won't ask how we got to that point. I
It
guess
came up last year.
as long as it's applied equally to that,
Exactly.
all only apartments.
Yes.
All
I mean, it's 6 of one, half dozen the others, just have presentation.
I think what might make sense would be to have like a class 1A or 2A, kind of like you did with the income-based apartments. where you say, hey, this is also this is a supplementary income source. There's this other labor intensive thing that's going on here with the city law commissions or something else. I have noticed that self-serve storage facilities tend to have some kind of secondary business line sometimes, and if the staffing requirement on it is different or greater or more intensive, seems like it would be fair to differentiate between those. I do think the way you guys added it back, like sort of mutes the effect. I mean, you ultimately, even though there's $100,000 difference in expenses, you only end up 65,000 apart on the net operating income. So it's not as bad as it could have been, but I think if I were a property owner, having submitted that number and just said, well, you know, I've submitted 3 facilities here, none of them are beneath the 35% expense ratio. Why is that ratio being applied? That would be kind of a fair question. But with that said, I don't think that the material submitted overcome the presumption of correctness in favor of the assessor's office. And, you know, if the 35% is a little too aggressive, I know it will be corrected for the upcoming year. But I don't think there's better evidence in favor of any other particular number in light of the sort of admitted overcompensation for certain of the staff, including the payroll calculation. So. Anyone else have questions or thoughts? Okay, is there a motion with respect to equalization application number 23?
I'll make a motion for Board of Equalization application number 23 that we affirm the assessor's number of $8,408,900.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Is there a second? Mr. Norfolk, excuse me. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Len. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, Board of Equalization, application number 23. The assessor's number has been affirmed. We'll now hear a presentation from the applicant on application number 84. Beacon Properties LLC.
So my presentation is the appraisal from the appraisal. Like I said, just that was for now. Not knowing it's a gravel lot. Flat, pretty flat. Like I said. We occasionally use it for overhaul and overflow for new trucks occasionally. I cut the grass. There's no income or expense associated. This would be funny or not, but land in the bed again. There's no income, no expense, so maybe no tax would be. That was gonna go over too well. Not to light it up, but don't know what we'll do with it. It was originally and still, or up until recently with the competition situation coming to town, was going to be community self-storage too. Some point, some years ago, approached the county to try to add another 50,000 square foot. It's just across from Putt Lane from community self-storage. We had challenges with site views and some other issues with the ARB too, and got down in the 30,000 square foot range, and the numbers just didn't seem to really warrant the condition at the time. We hope to be part of to doing an addition if when the Delaney lot next door was developed. In that time of waiting for some development to happen next door, we were lost in. think an extra 50,000 square foot at the cost. Even though we own the land, makes things work in this current climate, with interest rates and competition. So the plans, I wanted to know what the value was. And they came up with about $1 million acre. It seems to be the kind of the number in that area. $1 acre plus or minus 200 seems to be the number. Seems so. Have any other information? I don't want time, but I don't have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for? Appraisal?
So I was encouraged that we were pretty close to Will's appraisal, and you know there are appraisers and there are appraisers, as my old bosses used to say. And you know we have no problem with Will. He's good. He knows what he's doing. But you know you're going to come up. Even the similar appraisers are going to come up with you know different variants of values as they're looking at information. And so I was encouraged that we were very close on this, you know, but we do master appraisal and we've got information also. You know, obviously, Mr. Sandberg went through and has some specific comps that he used. We use comps from the general area and have kind of our formula that we've talked about and that Deb is going to kind of go through right now.
Okay. We have a 2024 assessed value of $2,956,400. This is a 2.459 acre highway commercial zone, parcel vacant, at street grades and level, good frontage and off the course. The property is located in the Route 29 BC corridor, which is, we've discussed it before. We've had that several other land discussions at Route 29 BC. We equalize the base rate in this area at $40 per square foot. Again, Pete mentioned that we base this on a mass appraisal method rather than looking at every property individually. And so we've considered the sales transactions from 22 and 2023 for the 2024 assessment. The $40 base rate has been adjusted by downward by 25% for location. The location adjustment map is located on page 3 of the presentation. And we've also adjusted it down by 8% for the commercial land size based on the table that's also on page 3. At that, the total equates to $2,760 per square foot for $2 million.
What does, what about this? No other party may use or rely on this appraisal. What's that about?
That's Deb is an MAI. She very closely follows USPAP, but which is the guidance for appraisers. So Will created that appraisal. There's very specific kind of rules about the intended user, the intended use of an appraisal, so that if somebody is looking at it without the requisite knowledge to understand it, it isn't used by that person because they don't understand the assumptions that are made So that's why the rules were set up. In this case, it's an appraisal. And I wouldn't object to it. Like
Okay,
I said, Will is a good appraiser. We don't have any objection to him or his abilities. That is,
and this land is assessed exactly the same as the right across the street where the storage unit is, right? The land basis.
yes, it should be identical. In the way it's calculated. Yes, the $40 a square foot, the 75% location, and then size adjustment. Everything on Putt Putt Lane has the same location adjustment.
You can see that on page 3 of the little map at the
Correct.
top. Shows the location adjustment for each one.
And as Deb mentioned, or actually earlier before the hearing started, this, it's unusual these days to have a level lot in the county or in the city. You have a lot of, graded lots that take a lot of, a lot of work to get them ready to be used. This one is ready to go.
What business is on the lot right in front of it that fronts on Ryle?
Oh, that's it's the old Bonanza building you're talking about.
Yeah,
That
okay.
is now Piedmont Power.
It's equipment place.
Piedmont Power, but before that it was Charlottesville Power. We built this Bonanza back in the 70s, and it was 20 years as a Bonanza, but they still use that same shell.
Bonanza many times back.
It's Bonanza.
Are there any of those left anywhere?
If there's any Bonanzas, I know there's just from talking, there's a few Ponderosas left here and there. A lot of fun at the time. I'm not sure I want to do restaurant business again. I was 15 or so years ago as a manager. Tough business.
So your base rate is basically 1.7 million an acre. $40, right? So what I think,
Yes,
$40
yeah, for the
square.
$40, yes.
then you have your adjustments.
I remember correctly when we were talking about the Red Lobster, that was $40 also, right?
That was the base. What were the adjustments on that? Can you remind me? It's an access adjustment and there was a location, right?
That is
I don't
correct.
think there was a location.
There might not have been a location on that one.
It was an access.
There was an access adjustment.
And there was a
'Cause
10%,
that's what we messed with, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
and then there was a 10% external.
Oh, that was in the building. We're just talking about. buildings.
So why doesn't this one have an access adjustment? Doesn't. I'm just-
This one should.
Size and location, right?
Yes, size and location. So there's no access problem with this one. The location is indicating that it is both off the artery and off of, not just off of
Right.
29, but off of Ryo Road.
And you can
So
get to
back
it.
to the,
The other property,
the Red Lobster.
the Red Lobster, correct.
Can you tell me if it has 3 adjustments? Size, location, and access?
I'm trying to find it.
to-
221A.
Yeah.
No.
I'm pretty sure.
You look at it enough, you remember it, right?
The 90% location, yes.
So-
Because it was also, it faced off of, basically, it faced Ryo Road.
Yeah.
And then the access was through the shopping center.
So
And then
is
size.
that a public road you got?
Public land is private.
It's still,
I know.
it's privately maintained.
Trying to figure out
It
the
is.
logic between. You have a privately maintained entrance into the shopping center, right? To get in
Mhm.
off of Ryan. And then this is similar in that it's a privately maintained road to get off of Ryan.
With the light.
First one had light,
No light on this.
no light on this.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, light on the Red Lobster.
On the rail, yeah.
Signalized, yeah.
Yeah.
Better access.
Is this parcel accessed off Putt Putt at the end of Putt Putt?
Yes, sir.
There's a,
Get on putt putt off of 20,
there's like
off just a decel lane, right?
There's no diesel lane on Putt Putt.
Is there a suicide lane to go
It's wide.
left?
Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
middle lane to turn left, yeah.
On Putt Putt, the first from Rio to the entrance of community self-storage is wide and it narrows the two lanes to go to the back, right at the access.
So you do have a decel going
yeah.
west,
Oh, diesel, I'm sorry, off of Rio. You're exactly right, going
but,
west.
and
but
you
not-
can, and then you have a lane to turn. Okay. So it's not signalized, but it's accessible both ways.
it is.
You know, sometimes that median hasn't yet, and it will one day.
The problem is
Extend
coming
past
out.
putt putt, VDOT's gonna take that way. It's gonna happen.
Well, you know,
Eventually.
originally, Just,
I've learned that VDOT's number one goal is to limit turns, especially left-hand turns.
I'm sure you know. This was originally, the Putt Putt lane was built to VDOT standards back.
You just
I
never,
know the
you
year.
just never turned it
It
over.
was basically, there was a $50,000 bond put up for a traffic signal to go there at some point, but it's never warranted a
Yeah.
traffic signal.
It never will. You should get that money.
Well, we would like to, that's the challenge. We've always, as someone that comes in and out of that intersection often, it's a challenge. It's almost impossible to make a left at certain times of the day. And traffic backs up to the light at Albemarle Square, back past Putt Putt Lane now. So, and this is neither here nor there, but we would love to have a light or something different than or really the goal was for VDOT to take Putt Putt Lane over as a public road at some point in its life, and that's why it was built to those standards. Now, that's been so long ago. I don't mean to get into the weeds with this, but that was the intent. Putt Putt Lane be built to VDOT standards then. So, we are just out of the traffic evaluation that the county's doing, it looks like it stops somewhere between us and Northfield's, the double lights there. I've heard of the Peanut roundabout. Then they're doing a lot down near the school.
Can you zoom
around
out a little
Belvedere and
bit?
Knox. We're kind of, I think personally, in kind of Netherland between what happens at 29 and what happens closer to John Corner.
So so 2210181, right? That's the Red Lobster up there.
Right here.
And there's a light there. I just feel it should be an access adjustment of some sort. I think this is because of the left-hand turning movement. It's a suicide lane that at times is not accessible to you. Whereas the light's always accessible. It should have some, it's a little bit more difficult. We gave it to them. I just feel there should be some adjustment, talking amongst ourselves here. Some adjustment for access. I don't have a problem with something you use for size, because that's a pretty standard chart. It's uniform, and I don't have a problem with the location, because you're, essentially a block off of the main drag. So there's that's a 10% reduction. No, not
25.
It's 10. So what's the 90
Oh,
is?
you talking about the Red Lobster? Or you talking about
No,
the,
I'm talking about theirs
there's this 25% reduction for
size.
location. Because I thought that's what we were talking.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. Yeah, I got it backwards. Sorry.
There's 8%.
8% for size and location 70.
Correct.
25%.
And that's supposed to represent the access to this road. So all of them have exactly the same estimate for, location off the artery and for that access on Putt Putt, onto Putt Putt Lane, Putt Putt Place.
But the Red Lobster has it broken into 3. Instead of, you're saying you combine 2.
Correct. And
Why would we do it this way? Why would we have separate factors that then we sometimes combine into one factor?
this one, I'm sorry, this one, the Red Lobster was simply to adjust for the access through the shopping center, not
Parcel to the mall.
as an out parcel, correct? It was very specific for that reason.
10% from Red Lobster.
15.
It was
but
5.
changed.
But
We changed it to.
yes, to 15, yeah. Based on a different property,
Right, the one down at Park Food Line,
Applebee's, so the old Applebee's.
which also had a light and I had.
That one had no light. Which I didn't realize it at the time. It doesn't have a light at that.
Has a light at Branch at US 29, but it doesn't have a light at its turn in.
We realized after the.
Well, we thought there was a light.
They're not actually the same.
Get it next year. I mean, we're not perfect.
That's why it's hard to, some of these details on the fly. But we feel like we've addressed the access in the location on this street. Because they all have the same access. When it's access separate, it's typically because it affects a specific property. Location is really more of something that affects a group of properties. So that's why we would do it differently. If the location includes an accessor, it would be a group.
For what it's worth, the appraisal group Inc. describes the access as average for the in the city. So could the assessor's office, I guess, respond specifically to the appraisal and why the mass appraisal techniques are more compelling or ought to be perceived as more compelling than what did? Because this is kind of what you hope to get every time somebody challenges the appraisal, right? It's an actual or challenges the assessment is an appraisal that's specific to the property performed by somebody with credentials that are comparable to what you guys have. They did it in this case, and he came to a number that was, yes, admittedly close, but it's $500,000 below what you guys are asking. So it would be great that we could come up with that type of analysis on every property, but the problem, I understand what you're saying, but and yes, this is much better than, you know, my property changed a different percentage than other properties, stuff like that we've seen in the past. But to compare a specific property in light of a fee appraisal kind of could throw off the entire system where we can't appraise them all like that. So why adjust one? Unless there's some aspect of that appraisal that stands out. That's what I would answer. If there's something that the appraiser has found that is different than something that we used as an assumption in our model, absolutely, that makes sense. It's kind of like finding an error in our assessment. But just because an appraiser who comes up with a single property appraisal different than the mass appraisal model, in and of itself, I don't think is evidence, if you'd like.
Well, what would be evidence then?
I mean, finding that the location, something that indicated our location here, the adjustment we use is not appropriate, as opposed to the other properties that exist, like the comparable properties. I mean, it's difficult. I mean, like I said, these are one appraiser's opinion of value and another appraiser's opinion of value. And they use that term opinion of value very clearly whenever you're talking about appraisal, because it's not an absolute science of this is the absolute right answer here. So this person is wrong, or this person is not as wrong. You know, it's not a comparative thing. It's do you trust the information in the appraisal more than you trust the information used in the assessment? Maybe that's what you're looking for.
I mean, I understand what you're saying.
No, I
You got a
understand.
market that comes out, like a market, and there's 10 people that want to buy this thing. And I look at them like the appraiser, like you get 10 assessments, you get 10 appraisals, you get 10 different prices. You get 10 people that want to buy something, there's gonna be 10 different prices they're willing to pay for it. He's got to kind of like get the average. I am still persuaded, go back on this, to the access issue, and that I think that, you know, if you felt that there was the 75%, 25% was a combination of two numbers, I'd like to see the numbers broken out. And I think that I still think we should put some amount, some additional reduction specifically for access on this parcel,
I would say,
so that it's
All of
treated
them are-
equally.
yes, all 6 or 5 of those parcels off of Putt Putt are 0.75. And then immediately to the right, if you're adjacent to the road is 0.9, then behind that is 0.5, 0.65.
Look at yeah, right. Look at the one next to it.
You know,
You got a 9 and then a 5.
No, I get it. I'm wondering if that shouldn't be a gradation, you know, at 0.75 to 0.7 or 0.8 to 0.7 or something like that. I mean, clearly the back corner there is worse than the front corner. There's no corner multiplier on.
That is correct. Let me look. You sure the front one? I'm sorry,
And the front one there,
not the subject.
Oh.
talking about one on the left,
So 2
215.
22150 is, did you just click on that one?
That doesn't have access off the ground.
I was talking about 22458 or whatever.
22153 right here. 22158
Yeah.
right here.
Yes.
Open ends.
Piedmont Power.
22158. Only has the location adjustment.
To me, that property should not be, have an equal location adjustment to the one that's behind it, accessible through the private drive there, and much worse frontage.
I mean, I think this is more, what I'm about to
Oh,
say
wait,
is
so
more.
does that one have an access adjustment?
No, sorry, this is the
Red Lobster.
So,
but no, it doesn't always help.
I mean, you've got how many properties to assess here? You can't.
50,000.
And I think it's I mean, you do the best you can, you apply what you can. And then it's incumbent on the taxpayer to come forward and point out things that they think need to be taken into account. I mean, it's not a moving target, but it's an active process. Is that
Correct.
And I don't know what the number is. I don't know if there's a consensus here. But I'm not saying 15%, but something. Maybe 10.
I could get behind, dropping that to 0.7 and just acknowledging that it's gotta be less than the one in front.
Yeah, right. I would rather see it as 0.75 and then another 5%, just for consistency of these are the things. Like, the 3 big ones are size, proximity to basically 29, right? Or other major thoroughfares, and then access to it. I mean, I guess those are the 3 big ones on land. Is there another? Topo, yeah, right, environmental features, sure. That's more like just this percentage is not used.
Right, exactly, marginally.
which I know way too much. So that would be my, I mean, I get 5. What else got it?
Yeah, I think it'd be like 7.5, 7.
I would just want to apply a 5%, like leave that 0.75 and then put a 5% excess.
Are you hearing the assessor's office though, that like they don't use the access field in that way, and that it would be unusual to do that, that was a special case with the Red Lobster one?
Why was that? I heard you, but I don't think I understand your full description.
Just because we see that Red Lobster as a single property issue. Because of the way it sits inside the shopping center. And we see this as a street that has access for all 5 of these properties. So we don't call it access. We don't treat it differently as access. We treat it as its location. So even if we did a different location in the front for the ones that face fronted on Rio and different lower one in the back, or higher adjustment in the back, we would still do it that way if we adjusted for that. Probably more than once.
Is there a motion with respect to application number 84?
I'd motion to reduce the land by an additional 5% specific. I would like to see it specific access. Access fee. Want to call that?
Is there a second for Mr. Mitchell's motion?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Norfolk.
Would you like before you vote, would you like a number?
That'd be great.
So it's 2,808,500.
2,808,500.
Correct.
Okay.
Improvements are still 100. Is that just a placeholder?
Yes, for the asphalt.
All those in favor of Mr. Mitchell's motion?
All right,
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay. Okay, it passes 4 votes to 1 with Mr. Mayo voting against.
Can I ask you? Is it not the number, but the way we applied it?
I would have voted to apply the lower location. Yeah. Okay,
Okay, so we are gonna reconvene at 3:30.
3 o'clock, 3:30.
3:30,
Make sure it's right.
definitely 3:30.
It is 3:30, correct?
Today.
Today.
Tomorrow.
And this is applications 14 and 15.
That is correct, and we're gonna have Jeremy
Jeremy.
Lee, Lynn, Jeremy,
Good.
good choice. Be here.
Talking sewers.
Or lack thereof.
Like, would you like me to stop the recording?
Do we have new business?
I need to go.
Oh, right.
We
Okay,
can
that's
wait
fine.
until later.
Yes,
and then-
that's what's in for now. So we're resuming the July 22nd, 2024 meeting of the Board of Equalization. And we are returning to which application number it is. We're reconvening on application number 77 related by United Land Corporation, or sorry, by owner Route 29 LLC, relating to property ID 4744. Anyone who's preparing to give testimony today, if you've not already been sworn in, please raise your hand and repeat after me. Or confirm, do you swear that your testimony and documentary evidence presented today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
So appreciate Mr. Lynn representing the Albemarle County Water and Sewer Authority joining us today, and I think we'll hear testimony from him first. That suit everyone? Mr. Lynn, we're grateful to hear and deliberate on any information that you have that you're willing to share, but what was of most interest to the board and the reason why we asked to impose on your time for you to come down was just to understand how the Water and Sewer Authority perceived the development of this project as of January 1, 2024, and the likelihood that it would be completed on the most recent time frame or the most recently identified timeline for the project. With that, I'll turn it over to you.
So as of, you said January 1, 2024, then CIP schedule had this project being constructed in fiscal year 2026 and fiscal year 2027. And that schedule was accurate until the middle of February. And that was the time period where we were undergoing the development of our FY 2025 CIP schedule. The FY 2025 CIP schedule is presented to the Albemarle County Board of Directors, Albemarle County Service Authority Board of Directors at their March meeting. In that time period, we had opened up bids for an Avon Operations Center, which is a replacement facility for the Service Authority, because we were losing our space out in Crozet. The bids were significantly higher than anticipated. So a decision was made to move the airport trunk sewer project to the 2027 to 2028 timeframe. So that decision was made and then presented to the board at their March and April board meetings in development of our CIP.
That's the construction years.
Those would be.
These are
the correction
construction years.
yes, sir. FY 2027 and FY 2028. The project is estimated to be a $6.7 million project, design and construction. That's what we had in our 10-year forecast, 6.7 million, give or take.
You increase that from 2026, 27 to 27, 28.
In all likelihood, yes, I will have that number.
I'm just asking. One less reason it might slip again. I think y'all do a pretty good job about this.
Is the change sliding the construction piece, I guess, back 1 year and the construction date? Was it previously set to like the latter half of 2027 and now it's just broadly 2028?
So we don't get to the month level, but what we have is it looks like 40% was in 2027 and 60% of the construction dollars was in 2028. Some of that is a balancing game to try to make our 10-year CIP as smooth as possible. But once we sign a contract with the contractor, we're beholden to their schedule and we're committed to the funds necessary to construct that.
Is it accurate that these properties can't be built on significantly or at least built to their current zoning without this improvement?
There is
There's some
significantly-
capacity, but do you know?
There is some level of capacity, whether that meets the needs of Route 29 LLC, I don't know the answer to that. There could be interim upgrades made to begin to increase capacities of limiting segments. But in order to meet full build out of the Willow Glen development, and that's who we've been mostly talking with, a majority of this utility had to be upgraded.
You say Willow Glen.
Willow Glen Phase 2, George Ray.
The
320
apartments.
units.
So he's hung up at 3. He can't go any further, really.
You can't get to 320 without significant sewer upgrades.
They can't get to anything, assuming he takes
Well,
the
we have a
first.
first come, first served policy, so whoever comes first, we're gonna listen to them and
But he
we're
has a
gonna-
site plan forward.
Sewer's completed in 25. You do reach full value.
Well, they had it,
Way out.
they had it at 85%.
Pete. We're having some technical difficulties. Okay.
So this project has obviously been moved. Should we stop?
You're good. You're up now. I lost maybe about 2 minutes. You guys are good now.
So the project has been moved at least once, maybe twice, backwards in time. And I'm guessing that there are other projects that high priorities that were kind of slotted in front of it from CIP, right? Yes, sir. Is that likely to happen again? Is there a way that you prioritize those projects like holistically, or is it just they're too unique and as you go along, you just kind of select, or the leadership team select the ones that seem most pressing at that time?
It's probably a combination of which projects are a priority. Some of our water main replacement projects where where our customers are experiencing outages and breaks and disruptions, those start to rise to the top of the priority list. With this project, easement acquisition has proved very, very challenging. We've had property owners reach out to our board members expressing a desire to stop the project. And so there's a lot of angst towards this project from customers who aren't going to benefit from it. All they see or perceive is a bigger pipe with more sewer flowing in my backyard and a construction disruption to my property for new development.
Reality is, it's required to serve the service district area. You have the ability to condemn.
Our board has the ability to condemn property.
They've been asked to do it, yeah.
This project, they have not been asked to condemn any property.
Would you expect that unless you condemned or at least had all of your easements, you're not going to go forward in 27 unless you have those?
We're not going to bid.
Part of 27,
We're not going to bid this project until we have all of the easements.
asking the question.
This project will, in all likelihood, require our board to take condemnation action.
Okay.
I don't see where we're going to be able to get all the property owners to accept
What's the
financial
time, what's
compensation.
the timeline if that becomes necessary?
The timeline to condemn,
The timeline to get this out for bid and get it finished? I mean, I'm assuming the schedule you gave us does not include whatever time it takes to do the condemnation process.
we would use the time before 2027 to finish the design and obtain the necessary easements. So with this schedule here, the goal, I'm not going to say a commitment, but the goal is to be ready to advertise and begin construction in fiscal year 2027.
So is there enough slack in the budget that you have in front of you to do at least one soup to nuts condemnation action?
Yes, we can do that.
Yeah, you don't need that necessarily CPI, you got enough.
And yeah. I mean, it's just part of, we would factor those costs into our capital improvement program budget.
Sorry, I wasn't really asking about the legal fees. I'm sure those would be eminently reasonable. I'm just talking about like the timeline, like to begin the case and pursue it all the way to the end. Is that?
Those are relatively quick in the grand scheme of this project. A lot of what happens is after construction, where you attempt to come to a resolution with the property owner. Following the construction, they see what impact it had on their property and then you hear the case.
Okay.
How long, you're gonna start in 27. How many months ahead of construction start would you start the serious condemnation process?
Given the number, probably a
Yeah,
year.
everything's different. So
Given
this thing is,
there's a lot. So if it had been 1 or 2, that's a much shorter time frame. But if we're
so
spending,
next year, if you don't get some better, you probably are not going to.
we would need to ramp up our efforts to to make efforts to acquire these easements. A lot of people are simply unresponsive. Some that are responsive say no way. And so that kind of know, you don't know what the no responses are actually.
You can also use the quick check power if they jump on it.
Take it now, do what the consequences cost.
That's one way.
So that's what it sounds like.
So I would ask the assessor's office, given where this was and where it seems to be now, do you have any ideas?
So, what is the time period? You're talking about fiscal years. When is your fiscal year the same as ours? July 1st? Okay. So you're talking about completion of construction by June 30th,
2028.
2028, which means we would have a target date, full value at 29. Okay. January 1st, 29.
So you would slide this scale.
Correct.
So
In
where
order
would
to
that
under the
slide it
bridge,
back
you've
to?
already done the, the heavier discount at, when you had it under a 5-year program, it was 56, 48, 39, 28, 15, full value. We would just back it out to
Yeah, where would we back it up to?
29.
They've already paid, they've already paid some higher numbers. But they're not getting it.
Wow. I think you can only go forward with what you got. So you just slide it a year. It's in our paper.
Oh, that's right, it's in here. Yes, so we would have, you would slide it a year from what's in here.
For the 2024 would be 56%.
2024, well, 2025 would be 52.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. 44. Is that right?
Sliding it. Yes, 2025 would be 52%. Yeah, 2024, the timing that we're talking about is the information as of January 1st, this was correct. But restarting for next year's value means that we would be at, for 55, we would be at 52%. Okay. And then go up to 100% in 29.
We could adjust 24.
Yeah.
Understanding February instead of reality.
So the request, where I guess the CIP was under review and being drafted in February. When did that process begin? I guess I'm asking, is there anyone in Albemarle County Water and Sewer who would have known that this was going to happen in December or as of January 1, 2024?
We usually start the process in January. After the-
When did that bid come in?
I think it was in March. But we were getting the sense based on the questions asked that rock was going to be a concern of the other project. And so we were having worries that our budget was going to
Where you
be.
moving to?
We have a site on Avon beside the Albemarle Health and Rehab. And there's a water storage tank on that property.
Any further questions for Mr. Lynn?
Yeah, just for the record, where does the airport trunk sewer begin and end, and how big is it?
So it begins below the Hollymead Dam. And then it goes up along Lake Hollymead and then crosses under Route 29 just south of the Coles site. And then it ties into a sewer that was put in with the Berkmar Drive extension. And then
Right.
Hunter expanded some of the sewer up there when the Berkmar Drive apartments went in. He increased the pipe diameter, kind of looking ahead.
Thank you.
So I have a question. I know that we're only tasked with dealing with 2024, but what if we get to 2026 and this gets booted down the road to 2 more years?
We would reset again at that point.
I think it would be incumbent on y'all to every year find out if they're changing their. So, yeah. Well, and so that it can be corrected before now. I mean, if something changes. Right?
Well, but that wouldn't have saved them here. I mean, they would have received the same piece of information from Mr. Land or his colleagues that the assessor's office got. The problem is if we are restricted to considering data that was available as of January 1, 2024, which I think we are by statute, the February stuff can't come in, but if it doesn't come in, we're going to overtax this person because we're not gonna be able to make the adjustment until next year, slot into the next step down, and this one will have been almost by definition overtaxed this year. It's my concern.
After.
So I believe that that's the restriction in the Board of Equalization enabling legislation, but that would be a good question for the attorney that we've sought to hire.
This would be a catch 22 for us. We have to wait, but then if we wait, then it's too late. So that's kind of a catch.
Be a year behind.
The only other way I could think to fix this would be to ask the assessor's office to stretch the steps from 5 years to 6 or more in recognition that this project has been on a step down schedule for some years already, and to reset the discount rate to something.
Or actually compress it to 4 instead of 5, right? If you compress your 4 instead of 5, you're gonna
Just make
get
it
more,
as set as of today.
right? If you're getting to 0 now, 4 years from now instead of 5 years from now, would get more of a discount theoretically for 2025. You can't do anything in 2020.
Does the assessor's office take a position about whether we can consider data that came to us in February 2024?
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that you can. I don't think you need an attorney to interpret that. Everything indicates that there has to be, there are certain times where it says you can't be kept from considering anything up to January 1st. But there's definitely clear language of not being able to include anything afterwards. So
I don't think it's not limited to data that they actually had on Jan 1. It's just data that could have existed, right, as of Jan 1. Like,
That's true.
yeah,
That's true.
and in this case, the problem there is that I'm hearing from Mr. Land that this data about the adjustment to the CIP and the timeline is didn't come into existence until February.
But also, I think. I'm not attacking anybody, I'm just saying, I think they pretty much probably knew, as we did, that this was being pushed down the road before this quote January 1 deadline. I think all people involved in this project of doing the sewer line extension didn't just come to knowledge. I mean, we've had emails back and forth with Jeremy for the past 2 or 3 years, just randomly every 6 months when we would have someone come with us. He'd be like, well, it's out. We don't know where it is. It's gone here, it's gone there. So I don't think that this quote January 1 is when all of a sudden we found out that this is not happening. I think there was a pretty good, my opinion, I think it's a very good feeling that it wasn't going to happen in the time frame that was set out in 2020, 2021, when we first started this process of reducing the taxes. So I'm going to strongly disagree with this January 1 that nobody knew anything. If you don't want to alleviate some of the burden, then I guess I would say, and I don't know how it's done, but then you need to, someone needs to give a much bigger discount 2025, 2026 to make up for what I've overpaid, what I believe I've overpaid for 3, 4, 5 years. So and I don't know what's the easiest route, but It's a matter of we can't do anything for 2024, which I disagree with. I think you can. I think I need a readjustment at a greater scale for 25, 26, 27, 28. If we don't think we're going to be at full term for 25, and we make it up that way. You know, we are a long-term picture player. I'm not looking at the short term. I look at the long term. So is my father for 60+ years. So I really, the older I get, I want the easiest route of things to happen. But I also want it to be fair in the long run. Maybe it's not quite as fair as I think it is in 2024. But when was the previous update on the timeline? When, before you just updated it, before that, when was it? Was that the original timeline, or was there already one before that that got pushed back?
The adopted 2024 budget had 26 and 27. And then that moved into the fiscal year 25 budget, and not until February is when we made the decision to move this project out 1 year to the 27-28 time.
When was that original timeline established?
21.
The project, the original project timeframe, it was it was added to our CIP in fiscal year 2021.
Can we do like a half step on the project since we're expecting it to complete in like June of 2028? Should that be 0.5 instead of 0? Can we split the difference between all the steps?
They wouldn't have reason to start.
I'm always trying to make sure there's some.
Well, I mean, here it says years to project completion in 2028 is 0, but actually we know for half of that year, be, kind of a logarithmic production and half a year towards 0. I just end up feeling like we need to make some adjustment on this in light of the delay. Resetting it as a 5-year project every year, that it's delayed by a year doesn't feel fair to me. Doesn't feel equitable to me for the landowner. I mean, I think we could. Are there other projects that have had this 18% discount rate applied? Just these two. Would there be an interest among the other members of the board in increasing the discount rate and recognition that it doesn't appropriately measure these particular projects, light of the sliding utility?
Yeah,
I think so.
Are you thinking?
60. Well, I was
Start
actually
there.
thinking, look at 18
Yeah,
and
that's
adjust there. But you're right, we could. Well, no, I think that's probably the simplest way.
And then do it over.
This is the present value of $1, so you can't just press
It just increased that.
it. You'd have to just increase the discount rate.
Can you tell me?
Easily?
What's your logic on, no, what's your logic on the discount rate? What was your logic on the discount rate?
It was land development discount rates with entitlements in place. And on a regional basis, we had unleveraged discount rates for land development inclusive of developers profit ranging from 10 to 30 with an average of 15.3 to 16.8 depending on the property type. And then PwC reported unleveraged basis inclusive of developers profit ranging from 12 to 30, averaging 18.7. So we reconciled to 18%.
So I heard PricewaterhouseCoopers on the second set of numbers? What was the first set of numbers
The
from?
first set of numbers between 10 and 30 with an average of 15.3 and 16.8 is Night Dorn Roundtree, Central Virginia.
Central Virginia.
Yeah.
And Price Waterhouse is up and down the East Coast.
National development, national development.
So there's a range of 10 to 30 in our general area. Where does that data come from? You call that, how does that created? Where'd you get that data? The Central Virginia.
The Central Virginia is done by an appraisal firm in Richmond, Knight, Dorn and Roundtree. They provide the information. Or they did in the past. They don't now. They don't as of this year.
Like every year they just have an index. that
Yeah.
they would-
They do a lot of different studies for BCU as part of the real estate program. And so they compile a lot of data for BCU.
Yeah, it doesn't
That's to the best of my knowledge.
talk to as much as they spend around here. So 10 to 30. Central Virginia, like they're specific to us and not including Richmond.
They do everything. Richmond surrounding
just pick-
areas. Yeah.
They pick area.
Wherever the clientele, lenders, wherever they're interviewing and requesting information from.
Or their student.
It
part of
used to
their
be part of the
classes.
student,
Right.
yeah, student data compilation.
Well, that tells me what you're talking about. There's a range of 10 to 30 we can work. Understanding, I mean, Price Waterhouse Coopers is national. They're at 18, and you said but you said 16 was the,
15.3 to 16.8 was what was the more regional, less national.
thoughts.
I'm just gonna model what a different
Yeah.
rate might look like. Do you guys have a function in the database to plug this number in, or is this a by hand
Calc.
adjustment? Okay.
I have a calculator.
Yeah, I have Excel, but I'm used to doing the other way around. My gut says that the appropriate discount that I would recommend would probably be somewhere around 21 or 21 and a half, 22, but I would really like to see what that equated to as a percent adjustment for lack of sewer capacity. And the goal would be by using that discount rate to try to approximate the 56% that it was last year, and acknowledge that the project is no closer to being finished today than it was last year because of the slide. The fact of which was largely foreseeable in December, even if it wasn't affirmed until it was in February. I understand that when the administrative process happened, but it's also hard for me to believe that any feature of the site came as a surprise to anybody in February. Likely, it was a foreseeable delay. especially based on the pushback from other landowners relating to the site and then the project working in parallel was for which there were rock and other delays or increases in the budget.
Hey, Jeremy, if your map holds, you need a year before you start construction. Started serious condemnation for easement acquisition January 1st, right? Before the schedule slipped. Or maybe even before that.
We will be more aggressive in our efforts to acquire these easements.
Very instant. Out there in government world. Some recognition prior to January 1st. This was probably. You don't have to use
Evan, with your suggestion, we would have taken down the 24 tax assessment down to 23.
Not necessarily. I mean, I think there are other underlying inputs that they use to probably derive a higher value. It's just that it would take one of the factors, the sewer adjustment, and kind of push that closer to the number.
plugging and chugging deep. I think I understand what you're asking for, though I don't agree with it. Just want to put that out there. 22.5% will give you in the fourth year back 44%, which is the same as the 56. The 2023 part of the schedule that's in your book. But in the fourth year.
The fifth year would have been something like 36%. 64. Understanding that the regional numbers are from 10 to 30%, average of right around 16%. 22.5 doesn't seem outside the bounds of reasonableness to me in light of the particular factors, the sort of unique factors delaying indefinitely and complicating the commercialization of the site, the development of the site. I'm sure that that's an imperfect way of resolving it, but I think that asking the landowners to pay taxes on a project that had actually not proceeded any further towards its timeline that we now know in retrospect was going to be, at the very least, it was possible that it was going to be moved in December. To me, that feels less precise and inequitable.
I agree. I mean, I think we can play with the present value. I mean, also recognize it's in the range. I think sewer is one of those things that's even more. I mean, there's zoning is the most unknowable thing, which would increase rent value. And then water and sewer and roads. And I mean, a lot of those properties that are probably in the study were things that are just sitting there that could be built on without a lot of fleas on the dog. And this has more unknowns. So I think you push that number higher. Yeah, I think we can err on the higher side of that range because of the specific issue that the site has. Articulate that proper enough for you.
I don't know if
Don't ask me to spell it, man. I can say it.
Any other thoughts or proposals? I did want to respond to something Mr. Wood stated. I don't think there's any mechanism by which we could sort of make this up to you in some future assessment, and that's why I didn't make a proposal along those lines. And sort of been unworkable for you guys, and also asked us to deviate from setting things to what they're worth in the year that we're tasked with doing so. Is there a motion then with respect to? Could we get a number on that? I'd already entered that. It's prescient. 2,021,700. Is there a motion with respect to board of equalization application number 77?
I'll make a motion to adjust the 2024 application number 77 for property to 2,021,700.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Beard. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, application number 77, an adjustment to 2,021,700 is unanimously approved. Turn now to application number 78.
Same thing.
Yeah, Mr. Lynn, is there any factor related to your testimony today that applied to Board of Equalization application number 77 that would not also apply to 78? Property ID 4756.
That's the right to the bottom. So,
They're in the same sewer drainage basin, so they would apply.
Thank you. Is there anything that the assessor's office would like to add on this application in particular for the board's consideration? Is there any, no, there's nothing different. Okay. Anything by the applicant? Okay, is there a motion with respect to, sorry, do we have a number for the provision? If we were to apply the 22.5% discount rate to this application? Same 44%. Number would be 694,500.
694,500.
But I'll make a motion to we adjust the assessor's number on Board of Equalization application number 78 to 694,500.
Thank you, Mr. Norfolk. Is there a second?
Second.
Tie goes to the secretary. Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. All those in favor of adjusting Board of Equalization application number 78 to $694,000, $694,500. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, that one is unanimously approved as well. The board thanks Mr. Lynn for making a special trip to help inform our deliberations today.
Back and say, there's gonna be soup.
Seems like there will
Come on,
be.
Jeremy, let us flush some more toilets.
Might not have the water to flush.
Oh, don't go down that road.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So are they gonna be doing next year?
They're gonna apply.
I feel like
Thank you.
y'all.
So it has gone out again.
I'm gonna walk downstairs.
My concern is,
And I'll run out.
same shit talking, we can't deal with it here.
Okay, so no,
Same thing could happen 2 years from now, and they pay the higher rate, and they have to try to go back and
I'd
reset.
like to put and see.
Yeah, exactly, the neighbors are gonna fight it, which means you can't get it done that fast.
I mean, I know they don't want to hear this. They need a site plan.
Minutes.
Sorry, let it slide until there's somebody. Site plan, that's the only thing holding up. is
Are the easements up there through commercial land or private? Houses?
Residential, it goes to.
Residential?
Yeah.
Let's finish, I think we have a couple of new business matters. Right, so let's do the minutes first. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from the July 15th, 2024 meeting? Or let me ask it this way, has anyone not had an opportunity who desires one?
You corrected the mistake you made.
Oh, we did, yes. There was one beginning value that was incorrect.
Okay,
I'll make a motion, set the minutes, July 15th meeting as written.
thank you, Mr. Miller. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Beard. All those in favor? Aye. All opposed? Okay, the minutes have been accepted as written. Next, did the assessor's office have any further new business?
I did. We had a request from Mr. McFarland's attorney, Shane Smith, which I shared with you. I forwarded that email to you all. That he be allowed to represent Mr. McFarland remotely and attend the meeting remotely.
Okay,
That means only he would be Mr. McFarland wouldn't be involved.
I'm not sure. It sounded like that, but I don't want to actually interpret. But it sounded like that's what he wanted to do. But it might have been situational. So he misunderstood my first email about
The date.
Monday.
Right.
They were going to be
You
here today.
were insisting that it be that date,
Yes, yes. So
but
I
you
think
weren't.
he was trying to say he would show up for him today. Because he wouldn't be available, Mr. McFarland wouldn't be available. So I don't know if in the future at a rescheduled meeting, if Mr. McFarland would be there also or not.
so
Can you remind ourselves why we didn't allow the phone call in the first place? I mean, I'm trying to remember exactly.
yeah, I mean, there were a number of factors that were discussed. One was sort of keeping it with precedent. Two was the timing of the request. Three was the nature of the appearance. I think it was going to be by telephone. Mr. McFarland was here in person. And four was comportment with the instructions that were provided as part of the application. I think it said you need to appear in person. So
Other than COVID, did we do anything remotely?
No, we never did a remote hearing prior to COVID. And the last one, I guess, would say number 5 is your rules of procedure say.
yeah, that's right. Yes, that was that also. And that was discussed at the same time. So my thinking is that we ought to just set this over for a date when Mr. McFarland can appear, and that I personally would vote against changing our determination about whether someone could appear remotely for Mr. McFarland under any circumstances today or whenever the hearing is held.
I agree.
I agree with that, even from a pragmatic standpoint. A lot of times you can't hear what the person's saying. Remotely.
It will open the floodgates to other people requesting to testify via Zoom.
I think there's also, this wasn't brought by the assessor's office, but in my mind, there's a question about whether Mr. McFarland should be permitted to submit any further materials individually or through his attorney, which weren't available at the start of the first hearing. My personal thinking is that if the assessor's office has changed some aspect of the way it views the case, between the time that we sat down to do the first piece, then information relevant to that particular adjustment would be, I would be willing to consider that, but I don't think setting the hearing over for another day to deliberate should open the floodgates to a bunch of extra documents or arguments.
Weren't there some documents attached to this email this morning that are new?
Yes.
There were, and there was another email with more information.
So is it accurate that the only thing that is new or was brought up in our
There were two things,
previous meeting was the fee?
the parking lot and the fee structure.
Probably the parking lot.
The parking on the separate parcel. He actually brought up the size of the lot that the hotel sits on. I brought up the fact that because of that size of the lot, his parking was on a separate parcel, a common area.
Sure.
But the other thing he was talking about was mainly what he talked about was the select service versus full service and the restaurant.
That was a discussion amongst us all about the definition of a select versus full service hotel.
Correct.
It's not new information necessarily. It's just a disagreement with how you categorized the hotel.
That is correct. And that's the information that he's providing in the latest emails.
Would any of this information make you change your classification of the hotel?
I don't know. Right now. Yeah.
So my memory is that we had essentially closed input and we were just waiting to deliberate. And then I proposed, or I argued that in the interest of being fair to Mr. McFarland, that if there was an aspect of the assessor's review, even if ultimately in support of the applicant, which I think yours was, right? It ultimately lowered his assessment, the small change that you were proposing, that he ought to be able to present further evidence as to that specific point, so that we've met his, so we fulfilled his ability to rejoin or to rebut. But I would vote against hearing more argument or hearing different arguments or adopting more input on any other point. Just because I think it would be unfair to the other applicants, some of whose hearings were also set over and did not submit additional documents and materials. Yeah. Is there any other views on
I
that?
think that I agree with that. He had a bite at the apple for all those issues.
I would agree.
Okay. Is there a motion? Well, do we need to make, what do you think, Pete? Make a motion as to resetting the hearing, or would you just contact Mr. McFarland and his attorney and advise them of a date or try to find a date that would work?
Yeah, I would again make a motion like you did last time, that this will be continued to a later date, subject to us finding a time that works. That's in the board's current schedule. That works for Mr. McFarland and his attorney, depending on. And then you also, I think, should make a motion or, a motion and a vote on the not doing remote. So that's an official decision.
I think it would also make sense to make a motion and vote on the scope of materials, additional materials that the board would receive. How can I eloquently define the adjustment that the assessor's office chose to make in Mr. McFarland's favor once after the initial meeting?
So that would be, and honestly, that's what I was hoping to get more information on from him, was where is it in the expenses? And if it's not in the expenses, where is it? But it's in reference to the cost of the parking.
Okay.
It's probably can.
It's, yeah, but the CAM amount we have, it does not match what we were, what those other documents that we looked up told us.
Got it. So I will make a motion then that the further document submissions or argument from applicant be limited to addressing the topic of the parking expenses or substantiation of the parking expenses in the operating statement. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Len. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, Mr. McFarland's application will be limited moving forward to new documentation or arguments addressing that point. Is there a motion with respect to Mr. McFarland's attorney, Mr. Smith, his outstanding request to participate by,
Yeah, I'll make a
Telephone
motion
issue.
that we uphold our current rules and not make an exception in this case.
okay,
I'll second.
thank you, Mr. Norford. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the request for remote participation by Mr. McFarland's attorney, Mr. Smith, is denied. And is there a motion with respect to rescheduling Mr. McFarland's application?
I'll make that motion that we continue this issue until a date when Mr. McFarland can appear that also matches up with our schedule.
Is there a second?
Second.
I can clarify that.
Oh, certainly.
It's gonna be one of the dates we've already got on the calendar.
That is correct. A previously advertised date.
That's right. Previously, I guess that's.
I'll second it.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Milou. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, that's unanimously agreed. Is there any further new business?
Don't believe so. I did want to let you know that Mr. Smith has requested that I email you the latest emails that he sent me and copy him. I have reservations about that because they go to your personal email addresses, and I've never emailed board members and copied anybody for that reason.
I don't see why you can't continue to be the conduit. You're just gonna have to take your word for it. You sent it to us.
So I have talked to I talked to my attorney, and he suggested that I create an email account through email for the equalization that would forward blindly to your addresses. I've already put that request in. I don't know how long it will take. I'm not going to forward the latest emails to you until that's set up so that it can be done that way. And then I'll re-forward the other ones to you. So, and copy him when I do that so he can see those are going to. It sounded like he is not going to believe that I've done it. That's what it seemed like.
Would you feel comfortable advising Mr. Smith of the outcome of the vote today and asking him from the board to send documents that comply with the scope that we decided today?
Say that last part again.
Would you feel comfortable advising Mr. Smith of the vote of the Board of Equalization today about what documents we would consider, and then leaving it open to him if he wishes to send anything farther, but that we've limited the universe of things that we're going to?
Yes, I will let him know about all three of them, that it's been continued to a date that we can come, to agree on. That the limitation of further information is related to the parking, and that you will not allow remote participation.
Very good. And he can ultimately send us anything he likes, I guess, or ask to send us anything he likes, but so long as he's apprised of what we'll consider.
And is there any blackout dates on the remaining schedule? I remember Mr. Norford was not going to be available the 30th, somewhere around that date.
Yeah, I'm gonna be gone the 30th, 31st, and the 1st.
Okay, so we have of course, we have next Monday, which is,
Yeah, I'm okay on that.
but I don't think that's gonna be too soon, probably. I'm just guessing.
August
Uh,
2nd. he will not be available.
Okay, so August 2nd, August 8th, August 12th,
It's something-
and it has to be before September 1st. So August 8th and August 12th might be the only options.
August 8th is okay with me.
8th is available for me. I have to
August 12th. is
be
okay
in
with me.
Massachusetts on the 12th. Can't do the 12th.
Okay, so did you mark up the 12th, Mr. Mayo? Okay,
It's okay.
It's okay, both days for you? Okay. Mr. Beard, okay. Okay, all right. And Mr. Norford, you were fine with the second day also,
The 8th and the 12th.
8th and the 12th?
Yeah, they're fine.
All right, so everybody's available on the 8th.
Yep.
Just
All
Mr. Mayo's won't be available. Okay, so I would really like you all to be here. You were all here from the beginning of it, so I'm gonna propose that the 8th is the only option. Because that's the only remaining day you'll all be here.
To provide more than enough time.
Motion to adjourn.
Um,
Are we having a hearing on Monday?
We have a hearing currently scheduled on Monday, but I think I told you this before. It was Mr. Kostelak was arguing about his land use qualification. I emailed with him a little bit last week and he was not, he didn't say, okay, I'm not coming, but he didn't say I'll definitely be there. So at this point, I'm not quite sure. I will definitely let you know if he doesn't plan on coming and lets me know that. Whether he doesn't show up, I have no control over that, but
What time on Monday?
9 a.m., I think.
9 o'clock.
correct. We have nothing else that day. The other ones were resolved that were on that day. Unless.
You have a meeting at 9, you said?
9 o'clock, correct.
7 o'clock.
If,
McFarland, you give him the option that he wants to.
I'll give him the option of.
Yeah, Monday.
I'm sorry, I discounted that a minute ago, but yeah, that's always another option too. I will suggest both Monday, the 29th and the 8th of August.
That's okay. Would you like to renew your motion?
I would,
Sorry.
yes. Motion to adjourn.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, here seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, the July 22nd Board of Equalization meeting is adjourned at 4:30 PM EST.